Hi, I'm Chris Lee, and this is Virtually Speaking. Joining me today is Erica Dhawan, the world's leading authority on 21st century collaboration and connectional intelligence. She's the co-author of the best-selling book, Get Big Things Done, The Power of Connectional Intelligence, which was named #1 on what corporate America is reading. Her much anticipated book coming out in 2021 is titled Digital Body Language. Erica was named by Thinkers 50 as the Oprah of management ideas. She was ranked #1 on Women Keynote Speakers for 2020 by Real Leaders and was in the top 10 management experts in 2020 by Global Gurus. She speaks on global stages like the World Economic Forum at Davos and TED, as well as to the biggest companies in the world. Erica writes for Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Fast Company, and she has degrees from Harvard University, MIT Sloan, and the Wharton School. Erica challenges audiences and organizations to unlock the collective power of teams, business units, customers, and other stakeholders. So please join me now with Erica Dhawan. Well, hello, Erica Dhawan, and thank you for joining me on Virtually Speaking. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here, Chris.
Good. I am so excited to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time because this is the stuff I really like, and so many of my clients are asking for, communication and connection. Being a communicator is so important when you're in sales, when you're a leader, even when you're just on a team as a team member. Teamwork and leadership is all about everything that you're talking about and that you're an expert in. And of course, you coined something that I really love, which is connectional intelligence. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
That's right, Chris. My life's work has been helping leaders and teams not connect more, but connect intelligently in our 21st century marketplace. We all know that we live in a world that is digitized. The last 8 months have taught us that digital collaboration tools can connect even more across boundaries that we never would have imagined even a year ago. But we also know that when we overconnect, we can create cultures of disengagement. We can actually create cultures of groupthink, or what I like to call Zoom think. We can reduce innovation and slow down high morale. And so what I've learned through my 10 years of research is that the key leadership skill for the 21st century is not just having the knowledge, IQ, is not just being great in reading emotions in face-to-face traditional body language, which we all know of as emotional intelligence, but it's a third skill that I call connectional intelligence. And what I really define as connectional intelligence is being able to unlock new and unrealized value by truly using smarter ways of connecting, not more ways or harder ways of connecting.
Wow. And so I know you've done this at the highest level, and you've worked with the biggest companies and the biggest organizations on the planet doing this. But before we get into what it is and what you've done with them, I just want to understand, how did you get into this field? Because I know you went to MIT, I know you went to Harvard, so you're pretty smart, obviously. That's awesome right there. The resume can just end and everybody's going to love that. But what did you do where you said to yourself, I want to get into studying this and analyzing this and helping people with this? What happened?
I grew up as the shy, introverted girl in a very conservative suburban town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up in a family of all Indian doctors that immigrated to the US. So I'm the black sheep. That's probably why I got all these degrees. And growing up, I never really was able to find my voice. In school, I was the kid getting the A's on tests, but in every report card, the teacher said, I wish Erica spoke up more. And it gave me this struggle in really speaking up and finding my voice, especially because my parents spoke Hindi at home and my English wasn't perfect, and I was sort of toggled in between different cultures. I often found that one of my assets was sort of reading people's body language and studying not what they say, but how they say it. And it helped me sort of build my knowledge set of what made someone popular, what allowed someone to display confidence. And I really got hooked in those early years on the power of nonverbal communication.
Mm.
It led to years then going into work in Wall Street, where I worked at Lehman Brothers in my 20s, pre-crisis. And during that time, I also realized that it's not just what teams do, it's how teams work that can lead to greatness or destruction. And it was really during that period when I worked on Wall Street that I realized that, you know, in today's world, we can't just rely on sort of traditional soft skills. We really have to think bigger and ask ourselves, not just what do we need to do and how do we get it done, but how do we work across teams in new and different ways? And that moment of working through the Lehman Brothers crisis really propelled me. I went back and did graduate work and spent a series of years at Harvard and MIT, really asking myself and really others around the world, team leaders, global companies, how do we really get big things done in a modern world? A world that is not just going to rely on being the extrovert, the person in face-to-face meetings, the person that has the best body language, but in a world that is now global, virtual, multi-generational, matrix, and remote and beyond. And that really led me to defining and codifying a new methodology that's called connectional intelligence, helping leaders now, I like to say, not adapt to the new normal, but more importantly, build a better normal that will last.
And your first book, Get Big Things Done, is all about this, right? So tell me a little bit about, and tell everybody a little bit about, what do you mean by get big things done? You mean like companies that change the world and companies that are really impacting everyone positively? Is that really what you mean by that?
A big thing is a big thing that's defined to anyone. So a big thing for a working mom could be creating a working moms group network that saves hours of time every week with, you know, kids pickups. A big thing could be discovering a new innovation, reducing duplicative work across team silos, saving hundreds of hours of work and leading to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I like to say a big thing is really custom to you. And my book really starts with this idea of, you know, what do you care about? And who else can help you achieve this goal? And really reimagining how you can connect with others. I'd like to share a short story that will put it into practice. So a few years ago, there was a team at Colgate-Palmolive, a toothpaste company.
Right.
And it was a team of chemists that were working on developing a new fluoride that they were meshing in their toothpaste. But there was a mechanical flow problem and the fluoride was getting stuck in the equipment and it wasn't meshing well. All the best chemists internally were trying to figure out why. No one could figure it out. It was taking months and months of time. And so one team member said, you know what, why don't we ask a different group of people? And he ended up posting this problem on a community website of scientists. And within 2 days, a physicist looked at the problem online and told the Colgate team, it's not a chemistry problem, it's a physics problem, it's about charged particles. Ended up solving the problem within hours after that. Colgate's team actually realized a few things from this story. The first thing they realized is they didn't even dare to ask the physicists at their own company because they labeled it as a chemistry problem. The second thing they realized is that physicists that solved the problem would have never been hired by Colgate because he didn't want to work at a big company. But in today's world, we can broaden the way that we solve problems. We can redesign our questions to say not just who are the 5 people we always go to for help based on their title, their role, hierarchy structures, but who can help and how can we design ways to allow those around the world with the power of our connectivity to bring the best solutions to us.
Yeah, and so that really goes to, you know, teams and the communication in a company where, you know, kind of people are in silos and people are kind of stuck in their own group and they don't really talk to the other silos, the other groups. They don't really know the feedback they would have gotten. So you're talking about open up your horizons and think about who you have under this roof as an organization, or even in your community, like you're talking about the mom online with her own group. Like, who do you have that you're already connected to or can easily be connected to that you can talk to? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it is about stop just looking up to your manager or down to your team members, look sideways. not just within your own company, across companies. I have stories in my book where I talk about how competitors in the oil and gas industry partnered up to share resources, especially with oil price change, massive changes over the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
I have stories of how companies in the financial services industries came together to reimagine how they recruit diverse talent to their industry.
Mm-hmm.
I have stories related to peer-to-peer networks of new employees that instead of just doing traditional onboarding and training and then going into their silos, create peer-to-peer Facebook type networks to help each other solve problems faster, and have become a linchpin to help improve productivity digitally throughout their organization during the pandemic this year. So, really this stems across the board, and it's about allowing us all to build the skill of connectional intelligence to more effectively leverage all of those around us.
So how does a leader introduce this? Because I think the leaders are still the ones that are going to have to kind of introduce this idea to their teams and their organizations. So how does a leader say, hey, there's this thing called connectional intelligence you should read, get big things done, you should check out Erica Dhawan. But besides that, like, how do they, introduce this to their teams? Do they just say, you know what, I want to change some things around here. We got to talk to each other more. Is it as simple as that?
I like to say the best place to start when it comes to introducing connectional intelligence is to use it to reduce and kill unneeded bureaucracies in your organization. We live in a world, even during the pandemic, where we have endless meetings, too many meetings, too many bad meetings, Zoom included, too many emails, over communication on certain tools, under communication with certain silos, cross team dysfunction and delays. We've all experienced these challenges. Now we're experiencing the rise of Zoom think, or the group think that happens in Zoom, and screen fatigue. And so, the first place you can go is to not add more, but instead kill the unneeded, wasted time that's coming out of not using connectional intelligence, but just over connecting in unneeded ways. And I have a set in my keynotes and workshops. I talk about a set of best practices on how you could do just that. So one of them, for example, is through a story I talk about at Sprint, where they created an initiative called Kill Stupid Meetings, where they actually rated the quality of meetings and realized that a lot of 30-minute meetings could be 12-minute meetings. They could have 3 in that block. Instead of having 30-person meetings, they started to have at least 8-person meetings, and usually the other 20 people could listen to a recording, could read an email summary, and share their thoughts, and weren't direct decision makers in the meeting. But there was a culture of fear or guilt that was wasting a lot of people's time. And then another thing that came out of it was virtual office hours, where instead of people booking 30 minutes for a 5-minute question, what you could really do is have office hours every day, 10 to 11 a.m., where anyone can ping you around anything. And it was transforming the culture and creating that water cooler environment, whether you're in the office, which is usually not this year, or working wherever you are. So that's just one example. Another example I'll share is with Merck, where we created email acronyms. So an example is to speed up and improve communication, because there's a lot of lack of clarity with the lack of tone in email. One of them was NNTR, which meant no need to respond. And that simple acronym just reduced a lot of the unneeded responses of okay and thank you.
Thank you, and yeah.
Another one was creating response time expectations. 2D means I need this in 2 days. So people know they don't have to rush and not think thoughtfully about something. They can be thoughtful and take time, versus 4H, which means I need this in 4 hours. Some of these simple things can transform 21st century teamwork. And we all know that the work starts in reducing the poor connection, so that then we can get to connectional intelligence.
That is awesome stuff just right there. I mean, stop the interview now. I've learned so much. We can all change our organizations and the way we communicate.
Oh no, Chris, I got more for you.
No, I'm kidding. But I'm saying that's just so great. I want to hear about the new book, and I want to talk about the fact that you probably are like, my stuff, the stuff that you've been talking about for years and years and 10 years as a thought leader and a speaker, is really pushed to the forefront now, maybe more than ever in your career during COVID. And I love making this comment that I'm making, that I'm going to say, which is that, once the pandemic's over and we're back to a new normal and people are back in the office and things are kind of more the way they used to be, which will obviously eventually happen. I feel like the one good thing that came out of this for the virtual life that we're living right now is it made it okay. And it made it something that wasn't scary anymore. So now, like I said, I remember 10, 15, 20 years ago on the phone, I was, a salesman, and I was like, one day we're going to be able to just show the product on the phone. Everyone's going to see us. We're going to have to dress up every day. We're going to be on the phone. It never happened. It still never happened. And then finally, I used Zoom for the first time when I did this show. I mean, I had set up calls for the speakers to speak to the clients on Zoom. And I'm like, what's Zoom? It's a phone call. It should be a phone call. And then it's no Zoom. And then people started gradually saying, I want to see you. I would like to see you. And then I started saying to people, do you want it? Like, since I did this show, which was about 24, 25 weeks ago, people are saying now, hey, I would like to see you. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's now I got Zoom on my phone and I can do it from home. And it's interesting how now people have had to learn the technology and accept that it's okay and that they're not afraid of it and they don't hate it. Some people still hate it, but I think it's going to continue to be a new way to do meetings and communicate with each other better. Would you say that it's going to improve everything even after the pandemic's over?
I think that the power of digital tools, whether it be video on Zoom or WebEx or informal chat tools like Slack and others, are great ways to engage and connect if used intelligently. And we, in certain cases, we're using them well, and in other cases, we have an opportunity to improve. And this moment in time is a great way to sort of reassess where we've come and digital tools that have sped up use, but also where we can go and how we can use this moment, not just to go back to the office in a year and revert back to old behaviors. We had bad meetings, we had poor email communication then, but to use this moment to transform, to build our capability in connectional intelligence so that we're not going back to work, we're going forward. And I really believe that, in a lot of my keynotes, I talk about how to use connectional intelligence in all the different collaboration tools. So I talk about video meetings, and I talk about how do you connect intelligently with introverts and extroverts. So for example, introverts don't always love being on video. It's not natural to look at yourself on the screen, but they love often the virtual chat tool because they're often strong writers and they like to share out their opinions. They love email so they can share deeper thoughts versus having to speak up or over talk in a group meeting. They love having questions or agendas sent 48 hours in advance so they can think through ideas. Sometimes Zoom meetings or email communication can create a lot of groupthink. Because if you ask, say, does everyone agree? And the first three people agree, it's much harder for that fourth person to say no. But when we were face to face in a room together, we could read the body language. We knew if someone was rolling their eyes. We knew if someone was disengaged and looking at their phone. We can see some of those cues, but the reality is we're only seeing about 5% of traditional body language cues in video because we have no body gestures. We are primarily only seeing the face. We are dealing with screen freezes and echoes, and also the fact that we're looking at our face versus others, and we have no direct eye contact. And so this is just some of the examples of some of the challenges we face that I talk about in my keynotes. But really what I focus on is how do we address that? How do we connect intelligently, no matter the person, no matter the style? And I talk about introverts versus extroverts and what they need. So as a salesperson or as a leader, how do you engage those with different styles and ensure everyone can find their voice, regardless of the medium, in email, video, IM, you name it. But also, how can we engage those with different styles, like what I call them digital natives and digital adapters? So digital natives are those that are really comfortable in digital tools, Zoom, Slack, you name it. Digital adapters are those I describe as those that feel like working remotely has been like learning a new language. They feel like immigrants to a new world. And it's also important as leaders to understand, how do you engage both of these styles, because I've seen digital natives actually teach adapters how to use different tools, how to use virtual whiteboards.
That
But
can be rapport building, right? That can actually be a good thing.
But sometimes adapters are teaching natives how to make sure they have the right virtual background and stay professional in customer meetings. And so
Hmm.
it really is the power of this collective experience. I also talk a lot for those that are thinking a lot about diversity and inclusion right now. How do you use connectional intelligence to foster a culture of inclusion, belonging, and allyship? And how do you also use it in different mediums in that way to create spaces for everyone to speak up? And a lot of that is making sure you acknowledge your own bias of your own digital styles so that everyone can engage. And also, if you have a global team, I share some of the best practices across different cultures as well. So Eastern cultures tend to communicate differently digitally than, say, Western cultures.
Absolutely. So yeah, there's so many great topics on the table here. I don't know where to begin, but one thing you did say a moment ago that caught my ear and my eye was I'm surprised to hear that Zoom could actually make things worse in the meetings. Like, in other words, I guess with the same team that used to meet in person, Zoom's not as good. I get that. But I feel like Zoom can bring a lot of people together across the country or across cities that may not have been able to get together. So isn't that a good thing? Better than them having like a phone call, conference call? It's got to be better than that. So tell us a little bit more about how the Zoom meeting can be bad and how to, you've touched on it a little bit, but go a little bit deeper if you could about how to avoid having these Zoom meetings be bad.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would actually I'll say that I think that Zoom can be better than face-to-face meetings when you use connectional intelligence.
Ooh,
So let me just start there.
okay.
The power, let's talk about the power of the video meeting. We can include people that weren't traditionally in that face-to-face meeting. In our new normal, we will have probably people in the face-to-face meeting and on video in the future. We can avoid turn taking. We can use the virtual chat tool. So instead of people over talking one another, or often just getting the extroverts or the most senior people or the loudest person speaking up, everyone can share their ideas in real time. And then the meeting host can use the power of that to call on people who have the most different or diverse ideas. Research shows that the first 3 people that speak up in a meeting, whether face-to-face or online, guide the rest of the meeting. So how are we going to get innovative ideas? How are we going to make sure we create cultures of psychological safety and true teamwork? We're going to design our meetings to be truly inclusive, and whether it's Zoom, WebEx, whatever your company or your organization uses, we can do that by actually being more inclusive than we were in the room. We're also not reliant on the visual biases. I'll give you a story pre-pandemic. I was on a call where there were 3 of us that were on the conference call and 3 people that were in the live meeting in an office. And it was a 30-minute meeting, and it wasn't until the 26th minute of the meeting that the team members in the room said, "Does anyone on the phone have a thought?" And it was because we have a visual bias where we pay more attention to people we can see face to face than we can see virtually, or not at all when people were on conference calls. And so there are so many nuances of the power of video meetings that will reduce bias, that will create inclusivity when used appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
The other side to it is making sure that we're using connectional intelligence as meeting hosts. And so a lot of that has to do with making sure that we are not creating Zoom fatigue, having everyone constantly on video 6 hours a day. I like to say, if you can, do your video meetings before 2 p.m. because there is real screen fatigue. Another thing that is important is to make sure you're designing that way for engagement. So whether it's having everyone share in the virtual chat tool, using breakout rooms, creating nuances so that introverts can speak up just as much as extroverts, having set times for people to speak so there's not certain people taking up all the airtime. Those are really nuances in the practice of leading with connectional intelligence that will make your Zoom meetings effective versus really ineffective as well.
Okay. And very, very cool stuff. And so now what's your new book about? You have a book that's not out yet. It's coming out in May of 2021.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to. Is it finished?
My book is finished. It is
Okay.
called Digital Body Language: How to Build Trust and Connection No Matter the Distance. I've been working on it for 4 years, and I feel
Wow.
like the timing is just right. And for all
Wow.
of those looking for keynote speakers, the exciting thing is I'm sharing, the book is done, and I'm sharing all the content early with my keynote and workshop clients right now, before the book comes out.
Nice.
So, we all know that we've dealt with those ambiguous text messages, the video chats where it's back and forth. Oh, no, you go, you're on mute. We lose the creative flow and the concentration. We've all had terrible phone conversations where we can't read the tone of a message and we ruminate. We have paranoia. We're anxious. We misunderstand one another. My book, Digital Body Language, and my keynotes on the skills of digital body language are really all about helping anyone and everyone build trust and connection in our new normal. And the key message is that distance doesn't matter. The key thing that I've seen in the data is that virtual teams, virtual work can outperform face-to-face and co-located teams. Because the question is not whether or not we're distant, it's how do we build trust no matter the distance. And what was implicit in traditional body language, the handshake, the head nod, the direct eye contact, the lean in and the sales conversation, now just has to be explicit in what I call digital body language. Every single day we're sending digital body language signals, even if we don't intend to, from the subject line we use, to the choice of medium we use, to the punctuation we use in our messages, to whether we use emojis or not, to how quickly we respond to messages,
Mhm.
to our video styles. And it's not just a Zoom body language. It extends much farther than that. But what my book really focuses on is helping you to understand, what is your digital body language style? What are signals you're sending, even if you don't intend to?
Right.
How do you best engage with those that are different than you? And most importantly, how do you build cultures of true collaboration and teamwork and innovation, regardless of distance? So that's what the book's about. I have lots of best practices I can share, but I'll stop here to see what questions
Well,
are on your mind,
yeah, I
Chris.
have a question. So, isn't it just be overly nice and as nice as possible and think about, is anybody going to be offended by this? Is this going to come off as me being too harsh? Is this going to come off as me being too demanding? And then also on the flip side, when you're reading what people are sending to you, isn't it just don't take anything personally? Aren't those two good rules of thumb?
So I think that assuming the best intent or positive intent is just a backbone of good leaders.
Right.
But what my book and what my newest keynotes do is take that a step further. So I codify what are the new cues of listening in a digital world. The new cues of listening are reading messages carefully. I'll give you a story of a client of mine. He sent a text message to his boss, Tom, that said, "Do you want to speak Wednesday or Thursday?" And Tom's response was yes. And while that may seem trivial, valuing people today
Love
is
it.
valuing their time, valuing their inboxes, valuing their calendars. So listening today is reading messages carefully. Empathy today is writing clearly. A phone call or video call is worth 1,000 emails. And so really allowing us all to reimagine, how do we upgrade our skills that were really just built into our backbone in traditional body language, which I had to learn as the shy introverted girl, to
Hmm.
what I saw now is that people don't just need traditional body language skills, they need digital body language skills. And I saw this as important, well, pre-pandemic, but now it's even more relevant, not just for the remote worker, for the doctor having to do telehealth with patients, for the professor having to do online learning, for the association leader having to reimagine virtual events, and beyond.
That's yeah, that's awesome. So, what is it that you're most excited about when it comes to? I think a new world has kind of emerged, obviously, with the technologies that are out, and with Zoom, and the pandemic actually, caused it all to come into our lives much quicker than it probably would have. But what are you most excited about? What do you think is going to be something that, and we may have already talked about it, but something that's really good for business that you're excited about right now, and that you're going to tell people all about, that they need to take advantage of it?
I think as the one thing that I'm just so excited about, and I think will engage all the meeting planners and event planners listening is the immense power of the virtual event and what we've learned over the last 8 months about the beauty and inclusiveness of what we can do. We all can't wait to go back to live events. I'm doing my first socially distanced live keynote this week, and I can't wait. But also the power of who else can we include? How can we have webcasts at the future of conferences so that anyone across the world can engage with us? How can we use the power of what we learned from the virtual chat tool to have a real-time feed while keynoters are speaking? And one of the things I love to do is I have multiple screens in my virtual studio, and I'm constantly giving shout outs and sharing back what people are saying about the content that I'm sharing in real time that I wasn't doing in person before. We can also engage in a lot more unique ways, whether it's breakout rooms, so those small groups can come together. Those random interactions can be sped up through random groups coming together virtually. And also, one of the things that I'm really excited about is in a lot of my keynotes, we've been doing, I'll call it digital body language improv, where we bring up certain people to come on, whether it's on Zoom or other virtual video tools with me to do live demos. So for salespeople, we've done demos, and we talk about how great it is to bring a surprise guest in for 5 minutes as a salesperson to sales meetings and how you engage them, or as a meeting planner, how you can reimagine how attendees can be part of interactive experiences virtually that we never would have imagined before. So that's just one thing I'm so excited about. You can tell I love virtually speaking. I love speaking in general, but I'm really excited about the future of innovation for this industry.
That's great. And in business, pivoting away from the meeting industry, is connectional intelligence something that is really catching on, and you're seeing a lot of examples of it, maybe from you because they've learned it from you, or you're just seeing it randomly kind of happen in our society a little bit? Is it something that is going to just continue to happen and you're going to be kind of the spokesperson for it?
You know, I like to say, I think that constraints drive innovation, as we all know. And I think the constraints we've all been under, and I just want to echo, I feel for everyone out there that's gone through so much this year. I do feel that we have this unique moment. We've seen so much disruption, but also so much innovation in the last 8 months around connectional intelligence. We're not relying on the 2 people that were next to us in an office. We really have, as leaders, to give up power and truly empower our teams. We have to try digital tools that we never would have focused on, and we often ignored in the past. And we have this unique opportunity to not revert back to old norms, but to use connectional intelligence to connect not more, but more intelligently in ways that will allow all of us to move forward. So yes, I do. And I hope that I can be a champion of these skills, but really more importantly, enable everyone and anyone to be able to use them to get the big things done that matter in their life, whatever that may be. And Chris, I have a gift for your whole community. I have a digital body language toolkit that is available. If you go to ericadewan.com/DBL, and I'll give you the link so you can share it. It's a digital body language style toolkit that will give you best practices on how to engage well in video meetings, in phone meetings, in email, text IM, you name it. And it's a great tool that you can share with your teams to really optimize collaboration in our changing world.
Well, thank you so much, Erica. This was awesome. There's so much great information in here. I'm definitely going to have to rewind this one, like probably monthly, because this information is so valuable. I can't wait to read your new book coming out in May. We'll all be looking forward to that. Thank you so much for the gift that you're giving to anybody who's watching this. That is so awesome to have that reference point. And what you're doing and what you're talking about these days is so important to the world we're living in now more than ever. So it was perfect timing and so wonderful to have you on the show. So thanks so much for coming on with me.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.